everybody, welcome to my homestead and welcome to my channel. In this video, we have some interesting news in regards to the red heifer. If you've been watching the channel for a while, you know that this is something that I'm following because this is one of the necessary steps in reinstating temple service for the third temple. Okay, now let me just say right off the bat, I don't know for sure that the third temple that the Jews are trying to build will be the temple of Jerusalem that has to be built before the second coming. I kind of tend to think that it will, although we've talked about the BYU Jerusalem Center. I have an entire playlist about it. And just if you haven't seen it, watch it. I know there's going to be people that say, no, it was not built for that. It was never intended to be a temple, da 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 da. And that's true. It may not have been built with that purpose, but the Lord could have other plans for it, and it could be a different type of temple, just like we're going to have administrative temples here in New Jerusalem when the 24 temple complex is built. Temples can have different functions. So anyway, potentially it could be the BYU Jerusalem Center. Potentially it could be some other option, or it could be the third temple. And this is one of the things that they're waiting for. I'm going to read the article. They don't necessarily need this to build the temple, but to begin services in the temple, yes, they do. Okay, so the red heifer. Big news. Okay, here I am on the Temple Institute Facebook page. There's about an hour-long thing where these heifers arrived in Israel from the United States. It's also up on the Temple Institute's official website. And this says the same thing as this, but this is easier to read. So I'm going to read it from here. On Thursday, September 15th, 2022, 5 p.m., 5 perfect, unblemished red heifers arrived in Israel from the USA. A modest ceremony was held at the unloading bay of the cargo terminal at Ben Gurion Airport, where the new arrivals were greeted and speeches were made by the incredible people who've put their hearts and souls and means into making this historic / prophetic day become a reality. Okay, so that's the news. Now, really quick before, I'm going to read this Israel 365 article, which gives a lot more detail. Before I do, I've done a couple videos on this already about the red heifer. I'm going to put the links for these in the description below. One is, will there be a red heifer for the third temple in September? Well, here we are in September, and the answer is no. Okay, and I'm going to show you why. They were intending for a red heifer to be ready right now in September to be offered up so that they could have the ashes, but that is not going to happen. And then I have this other one called Red Heifer Update. Okay, so I'll put these in the description below in case you want to go back and see what was going on at that time. And in this video, I go pretty in depth into why the red heifer is needed, and we look at a lot of different things. Okay, but I'm going to read a little bit of this article, which was from March 25th, 2022. Rabbi prepares for long-lost biblical ceremony. One rabbi shares his preparations for the biblical ceremony of purity through a red heifer mentioned in the book of Numbers. I'm just going to read this highlighted part. Okay, so the highlight went away. Awesome. But I know which paragraph it was. It's right here. Okay, Rabbi Burstein says, pursuant to the efforts we have previously discussed in this regard, we attempted to ensure that there would be a red heifer ready this year. The cows were grown under optimal conditions under the careful supervision of pious farmers from the Golan Heights. Unfortunately, during the last year, black hair was discovered in them. So in that video where I talk about this article, they had some other candidates that were already there in Israel. Continuing on, it says, the good news is that the hairs have returned to red within a few months. And then, quote, at the same time, we are now looking forward to the 2-year birthday of 3 or more heifers that were and still are completely red with God's help. And if there are no mishaps within half a year, we have the 3 red heifers ready for the temple. Now, this is the key right here. The 2-year birthday. Okay. That's how old. It has to be 2 years and 1 day in order for them to be ready to be used for this this service. Okay, to turn them into ashes. Now that's the problem right now with these ones that have just arrived in Israel from the USA, because they're not 2 years. So we're going to be having to wait more. Had everything gone right, these ones from the Golan Heights in Israel would have been ready right now in September, but it doesn't look like that really panned out. Okay, so now let's look at these ones that have just arrived in Israel. Okay, I can't zoom in anymore for some reason. Okay, Israel 365 exclusive. Red heifers arrive in Israel. Watch. And there's like a video here you can watch. Maybe I can skip forward a little bit. Come out. There they are, coming out of that crate thing. Okay, the Temple Institute in Bona, Israel, made a huge step towards reinstating the temple service on Thursday when 5 red heifers landed at Ben Gurion International Airport. The red heifer was the main component of the biblically mandated process of ritual purification for impurity that results from proximity or contact with a dead body. Because the elements needed for the ceremony have been lacking since the destruction of the second temple, that was the temple during Christ's time, all Jews today are considered ritually impure. All Jews today, as far as Judaism is concerned, they're all impure, thereby preventing the return of the temple service. So you can see why the red heifer is really important. It's been really hard for them to produce, but we now have these 5 candidates, and there's more. Let's continue. Okay, the Temple Institute launched its Red Heifer program about a decade ago, led by Rabbi Azariah Ariel. But even in temple times, an animal that fulfilled the biblical requirements was exceedingly rare. Failing to produce a suitable candidate from ranchers in Israel, and that, I guess that would include the ones that we were just talking about in the Golan Heights, the Temple Institute began investigating alternative sources for a red heifer. Boneh Israel, an organization that connects Christian lovers of Israel to the Holy Land, stepped in to help. Led by Byron Stinson, a native Texan, Boneh Israel understood ranchers. Okay, this is what Byron says. I didn't set out to do this right now. I'm probably the best red heifer hunter in Texas. The Bible says to bring a red cow to purify Israel, and I may not understand it, but I'm just doing what the Bible said. The prophecies came true, and the Jews are back in Israel. Now they need to build a temple. But it's like buying a really nice car. If you don't have the key, you aren't going anywhere. The red heifer is the key to making the temple work. It's supposed to. Boneh Israel took out full page ads in ranching magazines explaining the situation to ranchers. They requested that any red calves be set aside. Quote, several years ago, the farmer is a devout Several years ago, the farmer is a devout Christian who became intensely interested in the biblical commandment, Stinson explained to Israel 365 News. He began breeding cattle for this trade. So when my team and I set out to search ranches in Texas for a red heifer, his were already better suited. End quote. One of the major difficulties was that the government requires tagging calves right after birth. The ear tag creates a hole in the calf's ear, a blemish that disqualifies the calf for the mitzvah, or in other words, the commandment. The farmer explained that because of COVID, the employee who normally puts in the tags did not come to the farm when these 5 calves were born. Oh, now that's interesting. That's interesting. We already know that the pandemic, it really seems that it's tied to the second coming and the lead up to the second coming. And now maybe this is just another part of it. Okay. A team of rabbis from the Temple Institute flew out to inspect the calves last year. The requirements are incredibly demanding, requiring that there be no more than 2 non-red hairs on the entire calf, so you can only have 2. It must never have been used for any labor or have been impregnated. Because, by the way, that's how it works. A heifer is, okay, with cows, you have like the different names when it comes to farm animals that describe what stage of life they're at. So before having a calf, a female cow is called a heifer. After having the calf, it's now called a cow. For males, it's a bull, but if you castrate them like I did with my 2, after that, they become steers. So you have like these different functional names for animals based on uh, the productivity that you're expecting from whichever. So yeah, so if it had become impregnated, well, it's no longer a heifer. I guess I mean it depends on the definition, but as far as Judaism is concerned, that would ruin it. So, okay, the heifer must be 2 years and 1 day old to be suitable for the ceremony. Sometimes a calf that is perfectly red when it is young develops black or white hairs as it grows older, or may develop a blemish. Sometimes the colored hairs fall out or disappear. Certifying the calf requires a complete and intensive inspection in which a rabbi knowledgeable in the laws goes over the entire calf with a magnifying glass. That's got to be an interesting process, I must say, having my own cows, and right now just 2 steers. But I've had a bunch of cows, and I don't know how well that would really go over with them. I guess you'd have to do it while you're like feeding them grain. Okay, anyway, Chanin Kupiecki, an Orthodox Jewish resident of Efrat, is the liaison between Bona Israel and the rabbis of the Temple Institute. Quote, the Jews don't need to be pure to build the temple or to bring the public sacrifices. So they can do those things. They can build the temple, they can do public sacrifices. But then continuing, on the other hand, purity will take it to the next level and will facilitate rebuilding the temple and doing the service. I think meaning the actual service in the temple, because you can't do that without the red heifers. Okay, then he or she continues, education is essential to move forward for the Jews and non-Jews. Bona Israel is an Israeli organization whose main goal is education. Okay, now look at this. The cows were between 5 to 8 months old. Okay, so that's how far out we are on these ones being able to be used. And incidentally, that's the exact age range of my 2 steers that I have right now. I have 2 Angus crosses. No, sorry, 2 Holstein crosses. One is a Angus Holstein. The other one, I'm not sure, but I know it's at least half Holstein. Anyway, so the cows were between 5 and 8 months old. To be suitable for the red heifer ceremony, the cow must be 2 years and 1 day old. So these heifers will be raised in Israel until they reach the proper age. Okay. So if anybody was getting like really excited about this, and it is something to be excited about, but we're gonna have to wait a while for these ones. And I don't know. I suppose there could be other candidates in other parts of the world. You know, I'm sure that they're not like they don't have all their chips on these 5 heifers. But anyway, it continues. Shannon pointed out that last year was 5781 on the Hebrew calendar. Okay, now this is where the Judaism like really comes in, because they really like letters and numbers. And I talk to Rabbi Gerfein all the time. Well, not all the time, but every other week. He's the guy that Israel 65 set me up with to talk to. He's a rabbi, a Jewish Orthodox rabbi in Israel, and we're always talking about letters and numbers. That's like a big part of their thing. So it says here in Hebrew numerology, this is, and then there's this right here. I'm gonna see if I can pronounce that. Well, no, because that's a number. It's not a word. By the way, they use numbers for words, or they use letters for numbers. The way that Rabbi Gerfein explained it to me is that they view letters as a vessel for both a sound and a number. Okay, or a letter and a number. So anyway, this is the thing. and it says that that is an acronym for da 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 da, which means it will be the year of the red heifer. Okay, so last year, the last Hebrew year, 5781, acronym for it will be the year of the red heifer. The cows we are looking at now were conceived last year. Okay, so that's cool. That's interesting. Um, let's see. Kupietsi said, this year is 5782, and here's the Hebrew numbers, letters right there, an acronym for da 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 da. It will be a year for the red heifer in Israel. Okay, so the first year it will be the year of the red heifer, and then after that it will be a year for the heifer in Israel. And then it says in 2 weeks we will begin 5783, and I have my calendar pulled up here, my Hebrew calendar. Today is September 16th, which is right here, the 20th of Elul, and the Hebrew New Year, where they changed the date, is right here, Rosh Hashanah, on the 26th of September. So yeah, we're just not even 2 weeks. We're like a week and a few days away from Rosh Hashanah. This is a big time. I just want to point out as well, it's interesting all the things that are happening this month. The sun has a huge explosion on the 5th. Okay, one that will be studied for years. 3 days later, Queen Elizabeth II passes away. One after being the longest reigning British monarch in history. The next day, President Nelson becomes the oldest prophet or apostle of all time, turning 98. Okay, and then, what was that other thing that happened? I think it was like the next day. Gosh dang it. Let me pull up my disaster tracker. I think it was the earthquake. Yeah, that's what it was. It was the earthquake. It was the largest earthquake of this year. I was like, I just talked about it. Let me pull up my disaster tracker. And let's go to earthquakes. Yeah, that's right. On the 10th in Papua New Guinea, we had the largest earthquake this year so far. It was a 7.6 Papua New Guinea, and it was the largest earthquake that Papua New Guinea has ever experienced, and that's why I have the entire thing highlighted in red. The last time that we had an earthquake at least this big was back on August 12th of last year. There was an 8.1 in South Georgia and South Sandwich Islands, which are British islands, British territory. Okay, so we had that. And then remember, in August, on the 13th, we had that meteor that went over Utah, where in an area as large as southern Idaho all the way down to Provo heard the explosion. This was like the first day of a type of countdown to Rosh Hashanah, where there's like 7 times that they read these scriptures that in Isaiah, but it's like a countdown or a count up to Rosh Hashanah, which is very interesting timing. There's just so much, and all this is happening before the Jewish New Year starts. And remember, right now we're in a Shemitah. It's a sabbatical year. So it's all the more significant that this is happening right now. So here we are on, what was the actual date that it said? On September 15th. Okay, so on September 15th, yesterday, that's when they arrived after a really interesting week the week before. I don't know what you think about that. I think it's like some interesting things going on. In fact, they arrived exactly 1 week after Queen Elizabeth passed away. I just realized that just now. Exactly 1 week after she passes away, these heifers arrive in Israel. That is pretty interesting. Okay, so in 2 weeks, we will begin 5783, the year in which the ceremony of the red heifer will be performed, as long as nothing changes, of course, with these heifers. This is an acronym for da-da-da-da-da, which means it will be a year of the red heifer of redemption. In other words, when Jews talk about redemption, They're usually referring to the final redemption, which is when Messiah comes and initiates the Messianic age. So it's like the way that they view the Messianic age is the way that we view the second coming. And actually, really, they're the same thing. They just don't know it. Christ will come, kind of in a way that they're expecting. He's definitely going to come with power, and that's something that they're expecting. Someone that's going to defeat their enemies. And then he's going to usher in the millennium, which is roughly the way that they view the final redemption and the Messianic age. Okay. I'm not going to read the rest of the... Well, I'm going to skip down. There's a couple more things that I highlighted. I'm going to skip that other part, though. From the time of Moses, who personally prepared the first heifer, until the destruction of the temple, only 9 red heifers were prepared. Okay, so for all of like Israelite history, from Moses until now, only 9 were prepared. And then continuing, nonetheless, this was sufficient to maintain the ritual purity of the entire nation for almost 2,000 years, according to Jewish tradition. There will only be 10 red heifers in human history, with the 10th heifer ushering in the Messianic era. All right, so obviously they're excited right now. You can see Byron right here. This is the Texan that made this happen, and of course he's wearing red. He's looking really good right there. And the Jews are already very, very excited because there's a lot of things going on that are leading a lot of them to believe that the final redemption is soon. And I'm of the opinion that the Lord is preparing them in this way for the second coming. Even though they're expecting the Messiah for the first time, they don't accept Christ. Their minds are being prepared for when he does come at the second coming. And if they can get the temple built before that time, I mean, that may be the way it's supposed to play out. Maybe they will somehow be successful at building the third temple and then start their services therein. And then after that, the second coming, for all I know. Bruce R. McConkie was of a different opinion. He was of the opinion that it would be Latter-day Saints that build the temple. So just something there for you. I don't know if that's correct or not. I think that may just be his opinion because I've never heard that anywhere else. He could be right. Now, one interesting thing about the third temple, and I've done videos about this, is Cleon Skousen, one of our scholars from a member of the church. He consulted with these people, with the Temple Institute, on how to build the third temple. He was instrumental in directing them, not directing them, but telling them to use Ezekiel because like all the plans are in the book of Ezekiel, and that it needs to have an upper room, an attic. And I've done videos about that, so you'll have to go back and find those. It's really, really interesting. So at the very least, it seems that our church, although not officially, just through one of its members, has had a hand in preparing the second temple, or the third temple. But I don't know. We'll just have to see how things actually play out. So this whole story may or may not be significant to us as Latter-day Saints. At the very least, it's important because the Jews are excited about it, and it's getting their minds more prepared for the second coming. But that is the news. All right, and that's going to be it for this one. I'm going to put some links for a couple other articles that I've already covered on the channel. This one here from Chabad, and then this one, which is from like a Messianic Jewish website, which has a lot more really good information about this topic. So you might want to check that out. Okay, that's going to be it for this one. So if you haven't already, please make sure to subscribe, like this video if you liked it, and leave your thoughts and opinions down in the comments below. Also make sure to share it, and I'll talk to you guys later.